Well, we're gonna give it any more time. I think we're probably good. Usually you start at about five after, but it is four after. Close enough. All right. The Noels, the famous Ruth Ann and Brian Noel. How you guys doing today?
We're doing great, George. We're excited to be here. Appreciate the
Yeah,
opportunity.
I'm excited to have you guys here. You guys have had one of the coolest and most fun journeys I've ever had in my coaching profession, if that makes sense. Just the time we've been able to spend together, and then what you guys have achieved and what you've accomplished and who you've become and the things you've created, and not only the way you contribute, the way you give, the way you help and serve, but also just your business practices and the cool things that we've gone. But before we start into it, one, if anybody has any questions, of course, put them in the chat. And then secondarily, this is going to be a great interview. I'm really excited about this. I consider two of you very close and dear friends. And at the same time, it's not the reason you're on this. It's because of what you've achieved and, again, what you've accomplished and what you've done in the game of real estate, which is just incredible. You guys are doing awesome stuff, and it's so fun to see. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, George. We
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, before I jump into it, I just want to tell you guys can maybe fill in some of the story, but I wanted to just start off by just saying, I had the privilege of meeting the two of you, I think, for the first time, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was at a Mike Ferry event, I think an action workshop or something of that sort, many years ago. And when I met the two of you, of course, Ruth Ann, you were, if I recall, full time in the real estate space. And then Brian, you were playing in both worlds. You had a full time job in the property management world. And then at the same time, you were selling real estate and had been in the business for quite some time at that point. So, I just want to maybe just set the stage. When I met you, one, your openness just to meeting and the consideration of joining Everest, because I know you were at another organization before that. But I distinctly remember sitting down with you, and I want to start right here. And I'm sure there's many things we're going to discuss and talk about, but when we first sat down, I remember you basically said, "Hey, I want to do this full time." And I said, "Well, gosh, between 90 to 180 days, there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to do real estate at a full time level." And I remember you guys are just such a shining example of what you've done, not only with your sphere of influence, but how you've expanded your business model with other sources of business. And you got right to work early on in that conversation. And in fairness, the rest is history. And now I look back over these many years and I'm just like so proud of you guys, so happy for both of you and your family and all the lives again that you've touched, not only your own family, but just your shining example of professionalism and the way in which you operate and do business. And at the same time, you're making a tremendous amount of money, having incredible sales. And of course, you've had an incredible year even thus far, and the year's not even over. We still got 31 more days as of today. So, does that sound fairly accurate? I mean, I'm a realtor, so I got to embellish everything at some level. So,
That's pretty close. I was full-time property management. Ruth Ann, I wouldn't say she was full-time real estate. She's probably more full-time mom and part-time
yeah.
real estate agent to pick up the slack where when I couldn't make something because of my other full-time job. So
And when we had met, I mean, how long actually that so people can get a parameter of just your career. How long when we met, I think you'd been in the business 17, 18, 19 years. Is that how long have you been in the business now, and how many years were you in the business when we met?
well, let's see. I started in 1997, so you have to do the math on that real quick. What's that? 28, 29
It
years.
was 29.
29 years. In 97, Ruth Ann got her license about 2 years later in 99. We started the business with Wardley, Better Homes and Gardens, and then of course they were bought out and then we stayed with them. We joined Everest in 2012, I believe it was.
So it was right
Uh,
shortly before that we met with you, George.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then the rest is history. But that was a pretty big step in our life, and has been an incredible journey. And we will always be so grateful because it changed the trajectory of our life and our whole family's life. making
Yeah,
it.
you guys have done some incredible things, which we'll get into. I love it. Remind me at that point, just from where you were, and correct me with some of the numbers, because I know that really every year for several years it was just double the business, double the business, double the business, for quite a few years in a row. But if I recall, right when we met, the most that you had ever earned really in real estate on an annual basis was just a little over 100,000. Is that about
That
right?
It was
Yep.
actually just under 100,000, I
Oh, just
believe.
under. Okay.
Okay, she would know
It's
better.
about 108 was the most we had ever
Okay.
made.
So
Okay.
that was an exceptional year. That was not what we would typically do in real estate. It was probably
And
closer
and
to
you had been in business, so yeah, so we met in 12, so you'd been in the business,
four.
so what was that, 16, 17 years, give or take?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's great. So just as a reminder, just because, look, in so many words, yes, this is an interview, but it's also it's a coaching platform, as we know, in regards to just how you maneuvered. And as I remember, one of the core things I remember is that you had, give or take, around 600 or 700 people in your sphere, your database. Does that seem about right way back in the day?
yeah, yeah. It was probably a little
Well,
over
at that
600.
time, yeah, we had a little bit more than that. We scaled it back,
Okay.
scaled it down just a little bit to be a little more effective with who we've got on there and a little more realistic.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll get into that. So just give a perspective of when you first started, and we started having our conversations, and we started doing some coaching, and this platform where, I mean, I think there's probably people watching that are dabbling, if not even with another job, in business, just because of these markets have been very challenging. So a lot of things were happening. But if you go back to 2011, 2012, it's not like the markets were white hot. I mean, 50% of the homes were in foreclosure, short sales, bank owned properties. The markets were starting to just minutely shift. I think a little bit of maybe what we've even seen, some shifts in our market with some reduction in interest rates and affordability being a little bit better. But it wasn't even as much affordability back in 12 and 13 and 14 as it was just the fact of so many people had lost everything, the difficulty and the challenges of being able to even qualify for a home. It's where the big mortgage debacle and everything went a little bit sideways. But do you remember just what was your when things were where they were, and we had made, and you were, correct me if I'm wrong, it was either 90 or 180-day uh, 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 decision in regards to saying, okay, let's build out a way for you to be in this business full time. Do you remember what you did? Do you remember what you exactly did? I mean, I remember, but I want to make sure it's for sure accurate. So you need to tell this group back in 2012 when homes probably weren't selling that heavily, and life was pretty difficult. I mean, look, one out of every 10 listings was selling. There was so much inventory in the market, it was unreal. Again, inability for people to qualify, inability because they'd lost everything. The job markets were insecure at every level. I mean, things were really crazy. So, do you remember what you did to
No,
change the course?
I all too well. You bet. Um, so I really got my real estate license. I'd been a property manager for 23 years by the time
Okay.
that I'd walked away from it. So that's basically what I knew. That's where our insurance was and the whole bit. And I got my license because I was seeing these deals come together in the properties that I was managing and thought, I have people walking into my office saying what's available here in this community. And I got my license to be able to start taking advantage of that. And a good portion of our business that we were doing was just that there in that community. And then in 2012, when we met you with the at the Tom Ferry, or not Tom, at the
Mhm.
Mike Ferry event, and then Ruth Ann convinced me to come sit down with an interview with you to consider joining your company. And after that interview, we did, and we started coaching with you right off the bat. And I did not have a system. We did not have a game plan. We had never sat down with anyone to make goals and figure out how we were going to reach that. So that was all fairly new when we started coaching with you. And that was a game changer. Um, I remember the first assignment that you gave us was you need to call. As far as working our SOI, we had been sending out a calendar once a year to all of our SOI, and that was it.
If I recall, that was all you were doing, right?
That was it.
I mean, you weren't making phone calls as a
We
general
weren't
statement
making
to your whole
phone calls,
sphere.
doing anything. We're sending out the
Yeah.
calendar and then just talking to people when they would come into my property management office or friends, relatives, whatever. And after we'd been in the business for a number of years and people saw that, okay, we had a little bit of staying power, then a few things would start to come our way, but we weren't actively going after it. And the amount of business that we did showed that it just wasn't a whole lot. The first assignment you gave me was to call every day at least three people on our SOI. And so that was my first assignment. And I would not come home from work. I would end my property management duties and then at 4 o'clock I would pull out my SOI list and stare at it for about an hour and then start making phone calls and
Right.
or make a phone call and then I would stare at it for another 10 minutes and say, okay, who am I going to call and what am I going to say? But I wouldn't come home until I talked to at least three people. And that was a game changer. Um, After a few months of that, you said, okay, it's time to go to the next step, and you need to start calling or door knocking expireds. And so I made a binder and divided it up and came in and showed you. And I remember you saying, "Wow, you're one of the first people who's actually done that." And
I
so
can still say that, Brian. It's amazing how many people I tell go knock on an expired or for sale by owner's door, and they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I'm going to do it," and then they don't.
So I started doing that, and I can go through the numbers of and what my process was for expired because after I fine-tuned it and narrowed it down and developed a system that worked well for me. I've shared it with a number of others, but again, there hasn't been a whole lot of people that I've shared it with that has actually just gone out and done it
Yeah,
consistently.
they'll do it for a day or two, or maybe for the week, and then it fades off real quick.
Yeah.
Hey, and
And
then, but hey, on just go back just a little bit, and then we'll jump into this expired stuff, and then we'll jump back into Sphere. But if I recall, it was you calling three SOI in your database, and Ruth Ann, if I recall, it was five for you. Was that? Am I remembering that accurately?
Well, that is, but I've never really,
You
I
never
just,
did what I told you to do.
It was Brian who was more consistent with it. I would do it a little bit, but he did it very consistently.
Sure, but
so
that I mean, really, it was essentially talk to seven or eight people a day, which you've got programs out there all over the place, whether it's the core where people go, oh my gosh, what have you done with Rick Ruby and the core? It's like, I look at even just last month, I had five closings, and all I did is I started calling three or four Sphere a day, and all of a sudden five closings show up, and that's in my little world. And I'm this is what I'm doing nonstop is obviously getting agents to sell more real estate. But I just find it fascinating how powerful that Sphere can be when you bring value and you enhance and put forth effort into these relationships. It's fascinating how quickly life can change from that standpoint. And if I recall, in that first year, you went from basically 100 grand to 250 or 200 plus, whatever it was. You'll remember the number. Do you
within
remember?
within 9 months of joining the company and coaching with you and doing just those two things. And those two things have really been the foundation of our entire business, SOI and expireds. But after doing those two things for 9 months, we had doubled our best year ever in the last 14, 15 years. And then, as you said, previous the year after that, we doubled that and we're off to the races.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about just the well, two things. Let's talk about both of them. So specifically to your sphere, I mean, obviously, I see you participating in the company uh, centers of influence or the sphere of influence things we do, from the pumpkin patch to the Easter egg hunts. Just give a breakdown of today and just the evolution of what you've done from just sending out a calendar to what your sphere of influence and those relationships look like today. Like, how many calls are you making per week? What type of activities are you doing? What are you mailing out? What are you sending out? Emails or by, snail mail, meaning that just the normal everyday mail. What are you specifically doing with your sphere that is created? I mean, and look, guys, if you haven't, it's not like we make a major formal announcement of this stuff, but in fairness, you just had a closing that would be the equivalent of most people's entire years, if not then some, where you sold a $16 million property up in Promontory. But that came from, if I recall, it came from expireds
No, it came from our
or from
SOI.
your sphere.
That came from our sphere. It, well, let me go through the
Yeah,
evolution.
go knock it out.
And I remember early on at one of the morning meetings, I remember you talking about SOI, and you said everything, what you're talking about, all the different sources of income, sources of business, whether it be expireds or FISBOs or SOI or foreclosures or
Yeah.
any of that stuff. And you said
And today
it
would be, and
all,
then this, I think I know you're going to say, it, but you say it, but that would include, I don't care if we're talking about internet leads, which of course are so prevalent now. It doesn't matter, whatever other source, and then you finish it.
yeah. It all needs to funnel into your SOI. If wherever those people are coming from or sources of income are coming from, they need to become part of your SOI. You need to treat them like gold and then start building that SOI with whatever other sources you are. And so early on, that was as much as I did with expireds, that was really our something that was always in the back of our mind is adding them to our SOI and fostering that, developing that into a trusted friend who would refer business to us. So that's really been our focus. And if there's one thing that would come from this interview, I would say that's it. If there's anyone starting out, however it is you're getting business, you need to just make sure that you are building that SOI. It's not just a turn and burn type deal where you do a transaction and you're off to the next one. Man, you're missing the boat if that's the case, because it'll burn you out. And
Yeah.
that grind you can do incredible things with just sheer brute force. But if you want to have staying power and some longevity in this business and have it get easier over time, need to be always working on the SOI and developing them. So,
Well, you're nailing it. I mean, I always say these three things, which you obviously just experienced even this year. Number one, if your sales prices are not going up. Number two, if the business is not getting easier, just like you just said. And number three is if people are still asking you, are you in real estate or what are you up to or whatever it may be in relationship to them not knowing, whether it's at a party or a family gathering or at some social event or a church event that someone might be at, if they're still asking and wondering if you're in real estate, you're messing it up. So again, if you're not getting easy, if it's not getting easier, sales prices for you are not increasing. And number three, if people are still asking you what you're up to, we're missing the mark when it comes to work in our sphere.
yeah. So back to how we started working our SOI and into how we're doing it now, because there has been an evolution. And just full disclosure, talking to my SOI was difficult for me and just was not my favorite thing to do. I would much rather, and that's probably why I got good at expireds. I would much rather go out and talk to a stranger than I would a friend or relative or neighbor or whoever. I just didn't want to be that guy who was trying to
Yeah,
pitch his.
what was it that what was the resistance from? And by the way, I felt that same thing in the early years of my career. For you, what was the reasons as to the resistance, you think?
I didn't want people to think that I was calling them to get something from them, that I needed something from them. I wanted them to feel that our relationship was genuine and we were friends and I cared about them
Beyond the
regardless.
business.
Yeah, beyond business. And so I
Yeah.
didn't want to be that person who was, inviting their friends over to an Amway meeting at night, even though we did
Right.
that early on in our life. But I just didn't want to be that guy, and a little bit of fear of rejection. And I'm basically a shy and reserved person. I'm fine sitting in the background and not saying anything and listening to other people talk. So that's just me. So it was difficult for me. And that's why I would stare at the phone, and I would run these conversations through each and every single SOI person, even though we had scripts and that I would run the conversation through in my mind for 10, 15 minutes of all the different directions it could go with this person, and what I was going to say to this person before I would pick up the phone and call them. That's probably why I only called 3 a day.
Yeah.
Um, but I eventually that evolved into, okay, I need to offer them something of value when I call, or even ask for help in something. And so I would specifically target before I called any I would pull up their address, I'd plug it into the MLL search, I'd do a jump, I'd go to their address, and I'd draw a little perimeter around it to see what was available, whether it was active or if anything just sold or anything. Because the last thing I wanted them to do is to tell me, oh yeah, my neighbor's house is for sale, and I not know about it. I'm supposed to be the neighborhood expert. So it took time, but I would do that for every SOI call that I made. I'd pull it up. And if it was someone that I hadn't spoken with for a number of years, I'd see if there was a home for sale on their street or around the corner, or whatever, and or one that had just sold. And depending on whether it was active or sold would depend on how the conversation would go. I'd call them up and say hi and how you doing and all that stuff. And then, hey, look, the reason why I'm calling is there's this home for sale just right down the street from you. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't. I have some different buyers that I'm working with, a pool of buyers that this may fit their bill. Do you know anything about that home? What can you tell me about it? And they were more than happy to start telling me about it. And of course, then all of a sudden now the conversation's about real estate. Well, how's it going? And also they see that I'm someone who's going the extra mile for their clients, working hard to try and find them.
Right.
So for a long time, that was the gist of my calls. And I still do that today when I call up people. I don't want to be surprised. I don't want to be caught flat-footed, and so I want to know what's going on immediately around them. And that's how I.
I think some really good, and I don't know if you've brought social media into the equation, but I've always found it really interesting to be able to know the properties around that particular client or past client or your sphere. And then secondarily is that having that social media open for those who are most likely in it, and just getting a perspective of what's going on in their life to be able to have a legitimate conversation. So I think that's fantastic.
We're not too heavy in social media right now. We've started a few things, but then it evolved. We hired a marketing company, and we would send out the little cards. I don't have one here handy, but it had our face on it and something with what was going on in the market, some content. And we would send that out, well, every other month. And then we went to quarterly or every third month. So we would send that out, and then with our calendar, and then occasionally we would send out a letter that we would write to everyone, and then we would follow it up with phone calls, and that's basically what we're doing right now. We have content that gets emailed out to our top or to everyone every month, and then we have content that is mailed out to our top 100 every month, and then we
Every
promote
month
every month.
on the top 100.
On the top 100.
Okay.
We have 600 or 700 that will get an email, and we'll mail out something every month right now. And then we're trying to talk to our SOI at least every quarter. This last, Ruth Ann just finished up for Thanksgiving. She went and bought a bunch of real nice Thanksgiving gratitude cards, and she hand wrote. It took her a while.
Wow.
She hand wrote a note to everyone that was in our A group. It was over 100, how
I
many?
did about 160.
About 160 handwritten notes personalized, and it wasn't just a short little note. It was
Right.
something,
I
and
love it.
and
You brought depth to the relationship.
we mailed that out. And I can't tell you how many phone calls that we got and text messages saying, "Thank you so much for that card. That was just it was really nice." A lot of people just really touched,
So
and
good.
that's been the evolution of working our SOI. Um, has gone through that to where now, about a year ago, we made some changes in our business. We one of the things is we moved out of the office into our home here. We had this big home with 6 bedrooms and no kids in it. And so
Right.
what do we do? So and then we changed coaches, and we made a conscious decision
Who
that
are you being coached by now?
we're with Buffini right now.
Okay.
We've been with obviously first you for
Sure.
time till you encouraged us to start coaching with Mike Farragut, and so we coached with Mike for a number of years, and then we made a jump to Buffini,
That's
and
great.
that seems to fit our business model, our style right now, with a real focus on that building depth,
Yep.
working with your SOI, and some good things have come of that. But so a year ago, we did that, and made the decision. We don't want to be, not that we don't want to work hard because we're still willing to work, but we didn't want to be harried. We wanted to focus more on the people who we wanted to be with and who we enjoyed with, and going out to lunches and dinners and writing notes and making, "Hey, how you doing?" type phone calls. And so that was the conscious focus of our business at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, about a year ago. And then, as you said, this we'll end this year probably it'll be our best year ever in 29 years.
Yeah, that's so awesome. It's incredible. It's really cool to see. You know, one of the just I hope is as people are listening, just kind of the simplicity of this business is sometimes almost scary if people will really take a step back, evaluate it, and recognize that it's creating and bringing value to a relationship. And so often we're always looking for something outside. It always reminds me of the Acre of Diamonds story, right? Where there's all of these diamonds literally at the feet of this individual who went all around Africa looking for diamonds, and they were right in his literally his backyard. And after he had been divorced, and there's a few different stories to it, but took his life. Someone else took over the farm, and all of a sudden he's looking into the stream bed, sees a really funky looking rock, puts it on his mantle. A traveler comes through one day and says, "Hey, do you know what that is?" And it was a diamond. And the guy said, "Well, they're everywhere around here." And as the legend goes, that became one of the most productive diamond mines in the world. And sometimes I think that we forget that the diamonds are literally at our feet, right below us, and we're oftentimes looking so far outside of us or outside of our realm of where we are, thinking that the opportunities and the greener grass is elsewhere when it's just sitting right there in front of us.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see. One of the things I'd be curious, I just for me, how I've opened up many of those conversations with my sphere, just because a lot of times I think people do get a little bit nervous making that phone call. Of course, this opener is in our script book, but it was years ago where, I certainly there was a script that came along. It was a Mike Ferry script that said, "Hey, this is a business call. Do you have a few minutes for me?" Of course, living in Utah, that sounds like I'm just about to ask you if you have 3 friends and let's build your downline. And because, of course, Utah being the capital of multi-level marketing, from even that standpoint. And so, even that, as I would read that, it never felt quite comfortable for me. And as the years went on, for me, my most important opening line became, "Hey Brian, or Ruth Ann, or if I was to call one of you, or hey Brian, hey, I'm calling you about real estate. But before I jump into that, I just want to see how you're doing." And I have just found that little opener for me over the years is, "Hey, I'm calling you about real estate, but before I jump into that, how are you doing?" COVID taught us a lot of things. I know as we all went through that, but two things. One, how can I help you? And two, how are you doing? It really made me recognize the importance of our role as a leader in our industry, or leaders in our industry, and our care for humanity. And truly saying, "Hey, how are you? And what can I do to help you?" became really the taglines of the years during COVID. But I don't think that's changed much as we've moved through, our world today. Is that there's people who are in need, and there's people who do need help, and they're looking for leaders to show up, of course, like you, to specifically. So that's cool. I love it. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
obviously you've done some.
that line has been golden for us. I
Yep.
remember when we first threw that out, and it just it changes the tone of the conversation and sets it where it needs to be.
Yeah.
And
Well,
love that.
the weirdness, you know this, the weirdness of when you call up and you don't mention you're calling about real estate, or to your point, hey, there's a listing in your area. When you do that, and all of a sudden the opening lines are, how are you? Gosh,
Yeah.
what's your family doing? How's the work? The Ford,
The
family
wait
occupation, right?
first.
And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you try to sneak in, oh, and
Yeah.
hey, by the way, I'm in real estate. It just, there's a sliminess that really just exudes when people do it that way. When in reality, fundamentally, you're calling someone because you want to talk about real estate. So be forthright, be honest, have an open conversation with some integrity right from the beginning. But then also your sincerity about knowing what's going on with their world, what's happening with their family, or maybe you did jump on social media, saw them on a Disney cruise, or they went out, to Europe, or they went and had, one of their kids just got married, and having a sincere conversation, but also without the sliminess of not disclosing truly why you're calling, from that standpoint. So it's always worked very, very well for me. That's good to hear that you do that. And again, however you step into it, whether it's a listing or it's about real estate, but at the same time, you can have those honest conversations that are sincere and real and authentic, which makes it to where, again, the business should be getting easier, should be more fun, which I think is what a lot of what you're saying specifically to working with your sphere. So I love hearing that. Hey, let's switch gears to expireds. So early on, right? I mean, basically now nearly oh, see, 12. So what are we, 13, 14 years ago, you started knocking on the doors of expireds. Just talk a little bit about why you chose to door knock, why not so much on the phone, maybe a little bit about the system and the way in which you approached it. I know one of the things I appreciated is you started doing this early on. You set some minimum requirements of the sales price or the former or the previous list price, where you started to really say, hey, I want to make sure I'm earning a blank amount, a certain amount of money on every single transaction. In order to do that, I obviously need to go to a higher end of pricing. Talk a little bit about your system, talk about pricing, talk about your approach. Uh, and very, very interested to see, even as it's evolved, what it has been and how it's been in these most recent years.
Sure, you bet. And let me just start off with saying as big a part of SOI, which is the majority of our business right now, and we're so grateful for, we would not have the SOI business that we have right now if it wasn't for expireds.
Yeah.
Working expireds, going out into that area forced me to learn a certain skill set and attitude change and confidence level that if I didn't have that with my SOI, it'd be nowhere near what it is right now.
Yeah.
So the working expireds really blossomed our SOI business. So the reason why I started door knocking is because I was terrible on the phone. I hated the phone. I was not getting success on the phone. And for me, perhaps I didn't stick with it long enough to learn that particular skill set of being able to set an appointment on the phone. I was just terrible at it. And after a little bit of doing that and the type of rejection that I was getting, I thought, this is ridiculous. I need to go meet these people eyeball to eyeball, shake their hand and smile and let them see who I am. And maybe they won't be treating me so terrible.
Well, yeah, you know this. I mean, this thing is quoted so for so many years. I mean, it was done so many years ago, but it is the primary mode of communication, which is the UCLA study, which is what 7% of communication is your words, 38% of it is the tone of your voice, and 55% of it is the body language. Well, you know this when you're knocking on a door, you get the ability to use all three of those modes or modalities of communication.
Yeah,
Whereas on the phone, you have your words and you have your tone, which is not even 50% of the way in which we communicate at our highest levels.
yeah.
So I love the fact that you've taken 100% of the ability to communicate to another human being and said, "Hey, I'm going to go put this up on this guy or gal's doorstep and see what we can do with it because we're going to have the best chance of communication from that standpoint." And you know this better than anybody. People are less likely to hang up on you versus or slam a door in conjunction or in relationship to hanging up on you. It really changes the outcome, as you know, when you knock on a door and there's no separation digitally where it's a phone or an email or a text. People seem to be a lot nicer, a lot kinder, a lot more patient, a lot more willing to listen just because you go to the door. So anyway,
So
keep going though. So so
there
you
was all
decided to
that,
go knock.
and then there was all that, and then it was something to set you apart from everyone else.
Yeah, for
Not too
sure.
many people. Everyone was getting phone calls, but not too many agents would take the time to drive out and show up on their door. So when I would go out door knocking, I was very specific and targeted. I just wouldn't go out knocking on doors. Every day, I would pull up all of the expireds that had come up within my parameter, my search parameters. At first, it was all of them. Then it was anything over 500,000, and then I had to start narrowing it down to just specific areas because I'd pull them all up and they'd sit on my desk forever, and I wasn't going, way up north or out west or wherever. So pull them up
Well,
in my area.
I don't want to jump over that too quickly. Say that again, which was, hey, early on I was knocking on everything, but in
Yeah,
short order you said, hey, 500,000 is going to be kind of my minimum guideline to
minimum
where in your world, I
in the
presume.
areas where I wanted to work,
Yeah, and then of course you started choosing specific areas because of course there was probably the availability of these expireds all across the Wasatch Front specifically. But you really did choose a particular sales price or potential sales price based on knowing that you could, look, you can either extract more money from a transaction and do less or the same amount of transactions, or of course you can do more transactions. Well, what's easier, you guys both know this firsthand, doing the same or doing less transactions but earning more per transaction sure seems to be a lot easier than taking it and saying, okay, hey, now I'm going to go do 200 transactions a year, 150 transactions a year. And so I think it's really important to recognize that you can change your income by just simply changing the sales prices in which you focus on. I think
yeah,
that was a huge step for you to doing so. Especially, a lot of people think, oh, well, I could do that now. Still a different market. Back in 2012 and 13 and 14, those were not white hot markets. Those were still very challenging markets. And to take a stand that you're willing to only work in certain sales prices, uh, I think it's a testament again to your skill sets, but your dedication to saying, "Hey, we're going to work smarter, not harder."
yeah. So I'd pull them up each morning. I'd sort them in a binder, depending on whether it was Draper, Sandy, Riverton, South Jordan, Murray, Taylorsville, whatever. And I would put them in that binder. And then depending on which ones came up that morning or which area had the most, then I would pick, okay, which area am I going to work? And okay, I'm going to do this one. So then I would grab out of the binder all the ones that I'd put in there over the last week or two, and then I would scrub them. I would take the time or have my assistant do it. She'd go through, make sure they were still active, that they hadn't been relisted, and pull up on the tax ID who the name was of the person who owned it, and to make sure that their mailing address was the same address that was there. Because if it was a rental unit, I didn't want to be driving out and talking to the tenants. I wanted to talk to the owner. So we would scrub them. I would take that MLS listing, write the name of the person down on the sheet of who it was, and then I'd take at least 10 of them, and that's how many every day that my goal was to knock on 10 expired doors, all within the same area. So I'd grab them, go knock on it. My door approach was, "Hi, I'm Brian Noel, Century 21." I would hand him my card and I'd say, "You must be George." And because I knew what their name was. And that seemed to kind of maybe take the defenses down a little bit, or throw them back a little bit, take them off their game. So it wasn't just, oh, this is some solicitor. It's, oh, he knows who I am. What's he coming to my house for? The reason why I stopped by your home today is because I'm working with a number of sellers, and in doing that, we're receiving buyer inquiries on a regular basis. And so my question for you is, are you still interested in selling your home? Just as simple as that. And then, of course,
Love it.
it would go into different conversations. I'd have answers for if they said no or whatever, but it always was a conversation. So my numbers were, out of the 10 doors that I would knock on, I would usually talk to three. Um, Out of three, I would usually get at least one lead. And I considered a lead someone who gave me their phone number so that I could call them back later, or they pointed me to someone else, saying, "No, I'm not selling anymore, but I know my neighbor across the street has talked about it." So if someone was not home and it was a particular neighborhood that I wanted to be in, then I would go knock 5 to 10 doors around that person. If they were home and I talked to them, then great, I was off to the next one. I wouldn't bother knocking around that door. But I would leave my car parked in front of their house, and then I'd go knock on the neighbor's door and I'd say, "Hi, I'm Brian Noel, Century 21. I stopped by to try and talk to George and Jen, excuse me, Morris. Um, I know they had their home for sale for a while. I haven't been able to catch them home yet. Do you know, are they still living there?" And then when they found out I wasn't there to talk to them, everyone will tell you whatever they want to know about their neighbors. And so the defenses came down, and they tell me, "Oh yeah, well they sold and moved," or "No, they're still there." And so then we'd start talking, and it was just a conversation opener. "Well, do you know of anyone else?" I'd tell them I've listed some homes in this area. I'm working with a number of sellers in this price range, receiving buyer inquiries on a regular basis. Have you heard any rumors or rumblings of any of your neighbors that have talked about moving or selling? And I got lots of referrals that way. They'd say, "Oh yeah, so and so is going to be moving next month." Um, so that was my expired thing. If they were not home, I slid my card in the little into their door jamb, and then I came back. I wrote down the date and the time, and came back, and I had a letter that I would send them, a letter saying, "I stopped by your home on this date. You weren't home. This is why I stopped by." Blah blah blah. Just a real short thing. And every once in a while, I would get phone calls back. And in fact, one of my best SOI people, who we have done probably at least 12, 13, 14 transactions with, and the last ones have been in the millions. He had 20 acres up in Heber that he inherited when his mom passed away. And he called me up and said, "Hey, come list it." So multiple transactions, from these people, but I would send him a letter, write down the date and time. And then my goal was I would go 3 different times. The next time I was in that area, I would grab the ones that weren't home, and I would try them again. And I would usually try and do them at different times. I had a morning door knock time. I'd go from 10 to 12. I'd get about 10 doors, take me about 2 hours. I had an afternoon time. I'd go from 2 to 4. And then I had an evening time, where I would go after 6. And I would try and hit each one at least one of those three times, or all 3 times if they weren't home. And then after that, I would move on. Um, but I was specific and target, and each time I would send them, or I would put my card in the door so that they knew I was there, and they would get two or three cards from me. I would only send one letter, but I remember one particular home. It was a home I really wanted. It was in a neighborhood that I wanted to be, and I had knocked on that door six, seven times at least. No one, never got anyone home. Put a card in the door each time. I remember one night on the way home, it was late. It was probably 7, 8 o'clock. I was on my way home from the office or maybe door knocking somewhere else, but I wrapped it up for the night, was on my way home, drove past this neighborhood and thought, I should go try it one more time. And I thought, no, it's late, it's cold, it was in the middle of the winter, it's dark, I'm not going to do it. And I decided, well, okay, I'll go do it one more time. So I went, knocked on the door. The lady opens the door. I didn't get anything out of my mouth. She looks at me and she goes, "Oh, it's you. Come on in." She goes, "Come on in." She goes, "Sit down. I'm going to go get my husband." And I thought, okay, this is going to be either really good or really bad. And they came out. Yep, we are moving. And I basically took the listing right then without a listing presentation or anything, just because of the consistency,
Follow up.
just because of the follow-up. So
I love it.
there were skills, things that I learned with expireds and having to compete. Because most of the time, when you knocked on an expired and was able to set an appointment, they were interviewing other agents, two or three, sometimes more other agents.
Right.
So you had to learn, had to sharpen your skills to be able to compete with that, and that made me a lot better with my SOI.
It's awesome. I love it. Just actually, let's just see if there's any questions here in the chat. Um, not seeing anything, but let me ask you this. In today's market, let's just, assuming, because I've just seen names pop across the screen as they've come in and out of the meeting today, the coaching. What advice would you have for a agent in today's marketplace that either is kind of plateaued economically, or even number two, that are really doubting themselves and really amidst the struggle of today's marketplace? And I can say this, that the agents that I know are consistently struggling, or the agents that are not consistently struggling, they're not having the big battle that is often talked about. One consistent factor seems to be that those who are prospecting consistently are not struggling. Those who are inconsistently prospecting, no matter the source, are struggling if they're not prospecting. But I'm just curious, from your standpoint, right? You've had moments, you've been in this business long enough where it's gotten slow at times. Sometimes it's white hot, sometimes it's slow. Sometimes there's just the struggle, the mindset, the skills, the disciplines that are necessary. What advice would you give to an agent today? What counsel would you give to them of, hey, if you're struggling or you feel like you're kind of at this dead end, or you really are down on yourself, or you're doubting yourself, what would you say to them?
Wow, that's such a multifaceted question, because I've been through all those different things,
Sure.
and there's a number of things. For speaking for me personally, for our business, and Ruth Ann may say something different here. I'll say what I have to say, and then we're gonna let her say something. I've been
That's
dominating.
right.
Um, for me, it has basically come down to what's going on. If you're not prospecting, there's a reason for it. And you need to figure out what that is. Um, and for me, it has been, I go through periods of doubt and disbelief of, it probably wasn't meant for us, or I'm there's something different about me that this isn't going to work, or something along that nature. This will work for other people, but I'm just not cut out to talk to people this way. I don't have the makeup to do it, which is all just a bunch of garbage. It
Sure.
really is. But it comes down to the fear and the doubts that creep into my mind. So For me, I've had to be very conscious about what I let into my mind and what I choose to focus on and what I choose to believe to faith. And I wrote down at a seminar that you were giving one time, it just struck me. This is not the only definition, but I wrote down faith is what you choose to believe. And there's more to it than that, but you choose to believe whatever it is you want to believe, and whether you need to go get on a program with Mind Valley or some meditation thing or whatever it is, there needs to be a constant nourishment of your mind and your faith and belief system, that yeah, you can do it. Yes, it takes action also. And through my reading and studyings, I figure it's probably about an 80-20% ratio, 80% faith and what's going on in your mind and your belief and and yes, the setting intentions and manifesting those things, and then 20% taking aligned action that goes along with that belief.
Yeah.
Uh, so for me, it's do whatever it takes, whatever system, whatever program, whatever group of people, to keep that belief system, that faith in your mind going. That yeah, this will work. We can do it.
Yeah. I love that. It reminds me of just tomorrow, of course, we have our summit, which I'm excited for, and we've got some great things that we're presenting. And one of the things that I intend to speak on tomorrow is the choice of belief. And I was thinking about that even this morning, and I thought, fundamentally in this business, even when I was, a very young man, I had to make some very concrete decisions as to what I chose to have faith in, what I chose to believe in. And part of those beliefs, and this isn't going to be new to many of you, but it's a great reminder for all of us that number one is that we are the best agent for the job. And it may seem like such an insignificant thing, but I think there's something to be said about the belief within ourselves that we are the right agent for the job. And then that second belief over the years was, oh, and I just realized I can get the job done. And I think a lot of times we'll walk into a situation in this business and we may doubt ourselves, and that people feel those doubts that are so detrimental to people's belief and confidence and the certainty that they must have in the realities of you being able to get the job done, meaning get the home sold or help them buy a home. And that third one came about in these last several years, where I would sit with agents, Ruth Ann and Brian, and I would sit with them and I would have them come out of their mouths would be, well, I just don't really think it's a good time to buy real estate. Well, now hindsight being 2020, you can look at the escalation of value in relationship to what this market has done, and that is preposterous. Like, it's ridiculous. If you were saying 3 years ago that you don't know if it was a good time to buy or sell real estate, the reality is just the last 3 years combined, it's over 15% increases in home prices. So not setting aside individual circumstances, but as a generalization to the market, it's a great time to buy or sell real estate, and that you are the right agent for the job, and that you're the best agent for the job because you can get the job done. And when you start realizing that you have a choice as to what you believe, you start to be able to craft a much better mindset and a belief system within yourself that then is backed up by your power to execute and to do the actual work and the physical labor of even this business, whether it's from negotiating to knocking doors to the prospecting to the lead follow up, you name it. It becomes to where it begins to unfold in the physical side of this once we start with that belief and the beliefs that are deep within ourselves as to what's possible. So I love that, Brian. Rathan, what would you say in regards to if someone was struggling? What have you found to be some of the most productive or helpful things that you've done to keep yourself on your game?
Well, I ditto what Brian said. I think that those are very key aspects. But just tapping into the Everest system that you provide, the meetings, and whether it's the books, it's just, and it goes all in, to what Brian was saying, but so much of it is the people you associate with and what you're inputting into yourself can really make such a difference on your perspective. And, because we all have moments that we feel down or don't have that belief.
Right.
And so even when it's maybe it's not something that you want to do, is just associating with good people where you want to be, and then also what you're taking in, and then doing the hard things, which is prospecting, get out of that comfort zone
Sure.
and just do it. Because I know, like Brian, it's sometimes a struggle to get over that little bit of hump to make that first call. But once I do, it's so invigorating, and I have great conversations with my SOI. And so I think sometimes you just have to do it too.
Yeah. Yeah. Just actually just do the work. Stop overthinking it for sure. You actually, Roseanne, you said something pretty profound. It's something that I talk about a lot in our leadership meetings. And one of the things I think that COVID did, I think the white hot market did, I think just the evolution of digitizing everything from like this very thing we're doing, which is of course a Zoom call, is that people really stopped participating. And I was reading just yesterday, Ruthann, a article by Elon Musk, and it was the memo that he sent out to all of Tesla, from the executives to the highest paid to the lowest paid people within Tesla. And his statement was the requirement of 40 plus hours physically in location to the business. And his whole argument was, to your very point, is to what occurs in this collaboration, what works in regards to spending time with the right people, and the power of that association. And for years, I've said, look, one of the most important things that people can do to help their career is to simply participate. And as simple as that sounds, if you participate and you plug and play, really good things happen in this business. And so I think it's very profound what you're saying in relationship to just in its most simple terms. What I heard from it is participate, because when you participate, it is very, very impactful as to where you take your life, your own beliefs, meanings that you give things, what you see as possible, what you think you could do. Then you spend time with other people, realize maybe you could do more. The list goes on and on. And I think that one of the scary parts of humanity right now is the isolation. And isolation can be very dangerous. It's great to have a little bit of time to yourself, but having a sense of inclusion is fundamental to our own survival and our own personal well-being. So well said, guys. Any last thoughts? I didn't realize we're even out of time. We
Yeah,
are up.
yeah, we're
But
good.
any last thoughts, comments, anything you'd like to add? And again, thank you so much. But any last thoughts?
I'm just going to ditto what Rutan said. Plug into the system that you've created. And George, we're so grateful for the environment, the company, the opportunity that you've created. And we know that it's been a great personal sacrifice. We're grateful to you and Jen and all of your family for allowing you to do that. It was life-changing to be a part of your company and the environment that you've created. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, both of you. Well, just know I think the world of you, and I love to see what you're doing, and you're doing some extraordinary things in business. And the best part is that when people earn more, they get to become a little bit more of what they are. And you two are shining examples of goodness and greatness in regards to this business and what you do for others in it. So thank you, thank you, thank you, guys. So appreciative for everything you guys have done.
Thanks,
Thanks so
George.
much,
Okay,
George.
guys. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And this will go out on a recording here soon. And thank you, everybody, for everything that you guys are doing. And we'll talk soon. And we'll see you at the summit tomorrow.